We apologize for the audio quality at the start of this podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, listeners, here we are again. Another week's flown by. Last week we were struggling for something positive to say, and this week there's been a bit of positive news. Now look at the way everybody has responded, including the financial markets, to that good bit of news from Pfizer and the Gates Foundation and everybody else associated with the vaccine. Stephen.
Great week, Chris. This is what we'd call a turn up for the books. I've never really understood what it means, but it feels like an appropriate place to use it, given the surprise. I think that all sort of felt when that was announced. I think this has sort of crept up on us quite quietly, but I think more so than that, Chris, it really has. It's caused a bit of a positive spin. I think with public in general, but also business, the markets have responded, in our industry more broadly. I think people now seeing sort of there may well be some light at the end of this, what was once a very dark, long tunnel that we couldn't sort of claw our way out of. Now I think there's some light at the end that is in sight, and hopefully, fingers crossed, subject to the final approvals and certifications, this vaccine will be available from next month, December.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it is good to have a bit of good news, because even though people were saying there's a light at the end of the tunnel, it sometimes looked as if it was a bloody train that was coming towards you. But I think now everybody's seeing that there is something to sort of cling on to. But it shows, doesn't it, how quickly everything rebounds. You look at the stock market, the way it just went boom. I mean, it's settling back down again now, quite rightly so. But as we get more good news, things are going to go boom, settle back until something, really establishes itself. But another interesting factor with the vaccine, Steve, is, again, it's going to come down to money, because this sub-zero cold chain infrastructure that's going to be needed. And when you look at it, from warehouse freezer to rolled up sleeve twice in a month, it's going to be it's quite a logistics exercise. And those 5 days, for the thawing process, if something goes wrong there, and then there's spoilage, is going to be some terrible PR and news that's going to be spread everywhere because of the cost.
Yeah, I think important to note, and it's not just my own view, but I think it's shared elsewhere, is I think it's very important to recognise that this is not a silver bullet.
Yeah.
Certainly, looking at the distribution flow and those members of the public who will be entitled to receive the vaccination on a priority list, it's very clear that it will go to those the most vulnerable in society, and that I believe is absolutely right. The problem is, how do you get that to the most vulnerable in society, in the most kind of in the developed world, or the most needy nations, where healthcare is already challenged because of the economics, or because of the lack of I wouldn't say lack of wealth creation, but the lack of investment in the healthcare systems in these developed countries, or developing countries rather. And I think that is part of the problem, is that's where I think the logistics chain and the 4PLs have to work extremely hard with the drugs companies or the manufacturers to ensure they secure supply chain for the countries, but also to ensure that they can deliver right down to the last mile. And you're right, it absolutely is. And we've been speaking, Chris, about the cold chain and the pharma cold chain requirements on a potential vaccine for quite some time. Now that we've got one, it's actually important to sort of put in the wheels into motion in terms of actually delivering that. And therein lies the challenge that I don't think our industry has, or the 4PL logistics industry have fully yet addressed.
Yep, no, I agree with you. And I think what's going to happen now, because there are different types of vaccines that are going to come up, I think some of the, some countries are going to wait to see what type of a vaccine suits their financial position and their logistics position. So you may well find that some of the richer, shall we say, it's a terrible word to have to use at this time, but the wealthiest nations will start to do things earlier because they can afford to, but it will be urban based. And then some of the others are going to have to wait for a different type of vaccine that doesn't need the sub-zero, cold chain infrastructure and all the cost that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There. And people are saying about protein based shots and which is going to be the best one, etc. So it's going to be a big issue still, but it's great positive news.
Indeed, yeah. Let's watch this space and hope for some more positive developments again next week on this front.
Exactly. Now, Steve, let me ask you something now about the logistics. We're talking about it there. So, when you look at it from, costly production, you've got an unstable component at the moment. You've got the cold chain transportation. You've got the short shelf life. You've got an awful lot of challenges there with something that people say they're used to with pharma distribution previously, but this is quite unique. Now, getting everybody together that covers, and just looking at obvious things like trucks breaking down, electricity cuts, essential workers being sick, or, dry ice and ice stocks, all those things that can affect it, that can cause a problem. It's not as simple as people think. So everybody's saying, right, fantastic, now we've got a vaccine, now we've got to produce it, and boom, that's it. It's not as easy as that. So the whole logistics industry really, really now does need to come together and have some sort of coordination so they can actually see what the capabilities really are and how far it can be spread in the first, second, and third phases.
I think that's right. I mean, that was the words of caution that I used just a few moments ago. I mean, this is not a silver bullet. This will not be a quick exercise to vaccinate even the most vulnerable in society. Nor, I suspect, is it an easy challenge to solve for, given some of the problems that you make there. I think even more so than that, Chris, as well. I mean, when you think about it right down at grassroots level, the amount of people that are required in the healthcare system to administer the vaccinations to the public, and also, I mean, how does that work? Do you get kind of like an SK or an ice box or a dry ice box, or how does that work in the doctor's surgery? I heard from our esteemed UK Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Mr. Matthew Hancock, the other day, that you can only remove the vaccine from the cold chain maximum of 4 times in its entire lifespan.
Yeah.
And once it's been removed, I think there's then a very limited period because of the half-life, or whatever the technical term is. I should have paid more attention in chemistry when I was in secondary school. But for all those complicated reasons you mentioned, it needs everybody to step up. But I look at the positive piece here then, Chris, and say, look, herein lies the opportunity. And I think this is, as well as the opportunity for, let's make no mistake, these are commercial enterprises. These are private sector businesses. Let's not have people harping on or complaining about the public sector making any profits or money out of this. This is what will happen. It's quite normal. Only the private sector is large enough to deal with this and manage such a vaccine of such scale, because you'll get those on the left really harping on about this should be done kind of the philanthropical venture. Well, it will not be. Let's be clear. Now, for all the complexities that are involved in that process, it's right and proper that the 4PLs or the logistics people involved will have to solve for all those problems. Those come probably with great capital investment required, and there'll be a lot of investment capital. There'll also be a lot of IP, I suspect, put into it by those guys in terms of developing that for. This is not probably a 1-year shot, a moonshot, as somebody in government called it. This is probably a 2, 3, 4, 5-year program, Chris, maybe more.
Yeah.
So there will be a lot of capital involved, and therefore it is right that we expect that the private sector will have to make those investments, and they'll have to expect a return on those investments because they are funded by private shareholders at the end of the day. So I expect that that those arguments will be had in the background. There'll be a bit of noise, but that noise shouldn't detract from the excellent work that everybody will have to do to make this happen.
Yeah, as always. But I think whatever the money is, it's going to be much, much better spent looking at it from a solution from this perspective than the amount of money that was wasted on the test and the track test, and I don't know what you'd even describe it as now, because it hasn't actually worked that well. I don't know what's it 9 billion or 12 billion that was spent on it, track and trace.
Seems to be 12 billion pounds in the UK. I heard of other countries doing it. I heard of other countries doing it for a few $100,000 with some smart students from a couple of universities. And Malaysia, where I live, Chris, was one of the first to get up and running. And it works perfectly well, works perfectly acceptably. The feedback that I've seen is very positive. So quite how they've done that, I've got no idea. It's utterly bizarre. But now is not the time for those inquiries and all those investigations. Now is the time for all hands on deck. I don't think we can excuse the fact that we're all still learning, or government is still learning. They're not learning anymore. We now know much more about this than ever before. But to have boards of inquiries now, or opposition parties throwing bricks at others and using the media as their mouthpiece is entirely unhelpful. Not only here in the UK where we are today, but more broadly.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also looking at all opportunities. So from, cold storage to even shipping containers, where things are needed now, there needs to be some sort of, central coordination as to what's available, for how long, where, how can it be positioned, and some really, really clear guidelines to make sure there's no spoilage, because that would be unforgivable.
It would. I think somebody described this in the week as if you think around the security requirements around this vaccination as well, Chris. So you imagine sort of the analogy that I'm using is entirely unsuitable, but people will draw some parallels to it. Sort of the Pablo Escobar-esque, Piper chieftain or Piper Navajo dropping into a jungle in deepest, darkest Colombia or Peru somewhere, with their contraband on board. Or to collect the. I mean, these are the kind of operations that will have to go on if we want to get into the developing world and into some of these people that need these vaccines the most. Can you imagine the security requirements around these aircraft when they drop into these places?
God, yeah.
It'll be more so than the sort of the gold bullion requirements or the diamonds that come out of Africa and into Belgium and Antwerp and all these places. I think that's a big piece that needs to be probably solved for as well.
No, security will be a huge thing. I was just thinking, if only Fools and Horses was still on, there'd be an incredible episode about what Del Boy and Rodney would be doing with a shipment of vaccines. And knowing them, it would probably be the wrong vaccines. But no, it's going to be
it'll be the Russian one, Chris.
Yeah, no, very, very, very sensitive. Right, now, quarantine. Now we're down to a week. We're getting much, much better testing. So at last, hopefully something will be there. So again, I think there's going to be a lot of good news in the early part of the new year with regards to our industry, especially.
I think so. I think finally the government seems to have sat up and listened, not just here in the UK, but also in the rest of Europe as well. A lot of countries moving now to implement robust testing solutions. There's also, of course, the acceptance that the RT-PCR, which was I think and I can sort of state as my own personal opinion rather than one of fact, is that that it's not necessarily the gold standard when it comes to testing for travel requirements. I think there have been strong cases put forward by the Global Test Task Force, the GTT, around alternatives, and the alternative that seems to be touted right now is the antigen tests, which are much more cost effective, much quicker than the RT-PCR or the LAMP tests or the alternatives, and much more accessible, and actually can be done in high volume environments without the same kind of lab setup and testing regime that is required for the RT-PCR. I think the issue was some concern around the false negative rate, the sensitivity rate of the sensitivity in terms of measuring those that are positive with positive, but the sensitivity of the antigen test was lower than the equivalent RT-PCR. But of course, it all depends on penetration in society and the level of COVID in the community. Yeah. And I think that's important to reflect on, is that the government have finally sort of come round to this and understanding now that actually there is a good place, or there is a place for the antigen test, and that quarantine was a very blunt instrument. They reckon that compliance with quarantine was less than 10%, and therefore actually what you had was a blunt instrument being applied universally, but actually not complied with, not checked upon by the authorities or it's certainly in Europe with home quarantine, and other countries, Malaysia, for example, where I live, as I said before, they do have a very strong quarantine system that is managed well, and you can't get out of that quarantine system. So where that does not exist, testing is now being believed to be the right thing. That gets us down to a 7-day quarantine. I think potentially there's further scope to get under a 5-day quarantine. So test on arrival and test after 5 days.
Yeah.
I think that will help travel industry immensely. But that coupled with a vaccine is two massive bits of good news this week, and really pleased that we're starting to see some good news from there. I was having some offline conversations with, it's unfair to say home, but with a large European airline this week, and they are now already seeing massive demand. Whilst now, it's a problem. We're still in the trenches, still trying to establish what next. Recovery through these dark winter months will be slow. It's very clear that they are seeing massive demand now for next summer, and that's really positive news. And I'm really pleased to hear that. And I hadn't heard it being public sort of confirmed, but certainly in my private conversations with industry this week, that is certainly the case. So industry starting to ramp up again for next summer. That looks pretty positive and sounds pretty positive to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I say, I'm not an expert by any means, but I just think, the way cycles and the way trends and the way people go, as soon as there's a little bit of good news, things are going to just go boom, 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 and then it's going to be then the pressure is going to be on people how to cope after laying off so many people and losing such qualification and expertise. So that's going to be the next the next challenge, the next battle. So this issue of displaced people, because of practical sizing, it's going to be, that's something that's going to be really, really important to address. When I moved and worked with Nakel Logistics in Saudi, the CEO Mohammed Al Bayati, I said to him, one of the best gifts that somebody has ever given to you is in the name, because it's Nakel and it's logistics with care, and that focus about anything that's done with care makes such a huge difference if people understand what that care element is. And now that's a lovely little segue, okay, into the little reveal that was made last week, which has come from so many people, wanting to do something for others, wanting to consider what could be done differently, how to spread the care philosophy across industries and across segments within our own industry. Hence, Skylight Care.
Yes, Chris. Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
I thought that would have excited you more than that, but but seriously, Steve, no, I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's a great concept. It's a great.
So I think what's important for our listeners to know is we've, Chris and I have been having lots of conversations on the side as a result of some of our own thoughts, but actually also in response to some of the questions or some of the comments that we've received from our listeners, Chris, on these shows. And we've been really in one sense heartened by the level of contact that we've had from people that want to support others in our industry, including Chris and myself. And we have also been rather disheartened by the amount of people that have found themselves, through no fault of their own, still with a lot of value and contribution to give to our industry or to the employer, that we've been disheartened by the amount of people we've heard that have been displaced.
Yep.
And either displaced onto furlough or displaced through redundancy or end of contracts or termination of client engagements or whatever they might well be. But we've ended up as a result, I think, Chris, by the conversation that you and I have had, deciding to do something about it. And people have asked us before, what is it that we can do? So I'm pleased to announce that that tomorrow, today. Sorry, folks. There's a reveal.
Right. Yeah.
It's Friday today, but tomorrow, Saturday, the day that you're listening to this podcast, on Saturday we will be launching formally Skylight Care, and that's Skylight SKYLIGHT, and then Care, little play on words, CAIR.com, skylightcare.com. We've created Skylight Care as a new venture, a new business, initially founded by Chris and myself as a vehicle to help others. And really it's a result of some senior and respected people in industry getting together with a desire to help those that have either been displaced or find themselves out of work for whatever reason, to help them have the conversations with some like-minded people that they can relate to help kind of channel and filter, where the opportunity is going to be, what things are bubbling away. And we get that from the sister organization from Skylight Aviation in terms of what Skylight Aviation is doing as a consulting firm, and some of the projects that we've been working on over the last 6 months, and feeding that into the Skylight Care vehicle that is intended it's not a recruitment vehicle, Chris. It's important to note that we're not there as a recruitment agency. We're certainly not there to give anybody any a glimmer of hope that we will be able to get them into employment. But what we want to do is get people together with complementary skill sets and help them hone those and develop those, that will make them relevant again for when the right opportunities come along, and we believe we can help them, and potentially then sponsor them into some consulting opportunities or assignments as they come up. So Skylight Care, as I say, gone live today, Saturday, the 14th of November. So skylightcare.com. There's much more to come in terms of the website and what we want to kind of put together, but still there's a holding page there for now. You can include your details on there if you're interested, and our team will be in touch over the course of the next week or two in terms of actually agreeing what the next steps are and going forward. But we are very proud to be able to create this opportunity, Chris, and I think you and I have thought long and hard about what makes sense and what is the right thing to do. Yeah. And if we can help somebody, whether that's one person or two people or 10 people, hone their skills or develop their capabilities, or share from some refresher training or whatever that may well be, then I think it's a pretty good outcome to want to deliver.
Yeah, 100%. And to hear such stories of people, senior positions, and then they've been displaced, and they lose confidence, they're not sure what to do, and just to be able to keep people involved and keep people updated and keep them motivated and also help, it's such an important thing. And there's so many opportunities, and there's going to be even more that come because of people starting to realize the importance of care. Consider all responsibilities everywhere. Okay, that's what everybody needs to do, and there's so much scope for that to happen, to be introduced, to be compliant with, to control, to make sure it's clear, and also to help people with certain training and toolkit exercises that they can have. So touch wood, Steve, it's going to be positive. And like you said, even if it's only one person, it's going to be worthwhile. And it most definitely is not. It's not a platform where people can check their CVs or apply or feel that they're being put into a reservoir of opportunities like a recruitment agency. It's none of those things. It's just for people who've got the opportunity, the skills base, the experience, and the practical knowledge to help themselves first, help others, and then hopefully fall into some opportunities that come as a result of the whole exercise.
That's right. Yeah.
And a nice play on words, huh? With the sea and the air.
Indeed.
Very clever indeed.
It was.
Yeah. Now, Steve, coming back now to the vaccines. All right. So you got the World Health Organization backing this effort called COVAX. Okay, where they're trying to make sure that there's enough vaccines for the people who might not have the opportunity, but who definitely need it. And like the saying that's been pitched of late, we're all safe when we're all safe. And it's true, because if we don't make sure that the majority of people who need it get what they require, then it's just going to keep coming back in waves and waves and waves, and it's going to slow everything up. How effective do you think they're going to be in raising the 18 billion that they're trying to achieve to start to supply poorer countries with the relevant vaccines?
Well, if the UK was anything to go by, 2/3 of that was spent on a test and trace system that didn't work initially. So 18 billion, Chris, it sounds like an awful lot of money. To most people, including myself, it is a lot of money. Let me assure you, however, I was looking at some stats the other day in terms of continuing to meet their obligations to the developing world and fund the World Bank's developing countries fund. It is only the UK that go above and beyond its obligations in that fund. And the UK commits 12.5% of the total fund which is much beyond. If you look at the likes of Germany, France, 3%, 4%, Spain, 0.5%, Portugal. I mean, even the USA is below 10%, and Japan. So actually, the UK is already kicking much beyond its kind of weight, both economically and from a populist perspective. I think that's something that we should be very proud of in this country. And so I know that there will be a lot of people listening to me now who want to fact check this stuff. Please feel free. It's on the World Bank. Because I think they think often that the Conservative government is not well known for its charity. Let me assure you that is not the case. And I think therefore, with that in mind, Chris, I'm sure the funds are available to support the developing world. It's the right thing for us to do. We'll continue to do that. And I think if each country put as much effort into supporting the developing world as they do into supplying arms or building armory or munitions of war, or developing chemicals that can be used for unfriendly purposes, I think we'd be in a far better place. But let's not get all philosophical about it. This is the right thing to do to support this.
Yeah, 100%. And the Gates Foundation, it's ironic when this came out and everybody was referring back to Bill's famous speeches 5, 6, 7 years ago or whatever. And now they're heavily involved in the vaccine and also now in the foundation with regards to COVAX and raising the money. So it's
they're also the major shareholder in BioNTech, who is the creator of the vaccine. I mean, Pfizer is the large pharmaceutical behind the vaccine, but BioNTech, majority shareholder, I believe, can fact check online, of course, but BioNTech is owned by Bill and Melinda Gates. And I find that a little what's the right word? Troubling is too strong, but I find it rather peculiar, Chris, that in a TEDx talk, Bill Gates was talking about this. It seemed to come right, and Bill Gates is now going to profiteer from such vaccine, but he will also be supplying back into the developing world and supporting that from a philanthropical perspective. Those things are all interestingly linked.
But which, to be fair to the Gates Foundation, is, I mean, substantial isn't a big enough word.
I'll just let that hang there, Chris. I'm not suggesting anything is untoward. I'm certainly not one of those weirdo conspiracists. I'm just saying it is coincidental. That's all.
Yeah. Or else it's engagement and driven from something that he knew or they knew was going to happen. But it's great. And now, obviously, you've got everybody jumping on. You know, you've got Air France, KLM, Martinair. They're saying they're ready to distribute the vaccines, which is great. But we know there's a huge amount of logistical challenges there. Another good bit of news: Glyn Hughes. So we heard that we heard that he left IATA. Now he's joining Tiaka. So good luck, Glyn. Well done, son.
You kept that one quiet, Chris.
But it's just good. Yeah, but it's. I think it's a logical step, and fair play to him. Him and Tiaka. I think they'll do well there. So I think that's a good relationship.
Sorry, for those that don't know, it's the International Air Cargo Association.
Well done, Steve.
Well,
done.
I'm just saying, Chris. Not everybody knows who Tiaka is.
Yeah. No, but fair play to you. Yeah. No, that's a good one. That's very good. And then you've got just trying to think what else has come up now this week that's worth covering. So still losses. You got Lufthansa, certain packages, unions. So people are agreeing.
I think there's still some challenges out there, Chris. It was interesting. The Kappa held their Kappa Live event this week. There was some interesting debate and discussion on there. It was good to hear from people like Peter Elbers at KLM and how they're doing with their transformation journey. Amongst others, it was good to hear from Eddie Wilson at Ryanair. Eddie's the CEO of Ryanair DAC, which is the European AOC of Ryanair. And hear how they are capitalizing opportunities and so on. It was also very interesting, Chris, to hear about the views on the slot moratorium. And it'll be interesting next year going forward. There was certainly a consensus in the debate that I heard that was chaired by a good friend and colleague of mine, David Hutner from PA Consulting, the Nairis Aviation Consulting firm, with representation from Gatwick and also former slot coordinator at ACL, Chris Bosworth, and another chap from ACI who looks after the slot and compliance portfolio. There's certainly a view that the moratorium should end come Northern Summer 21 schedule starting. That means we go back to the original rules, and that the use it or lose it criteria will then apply. Yeah. And the consensus was that that rather than an extension of the moratorium be continued, the consensus was very much that there should be a selective force majeure clause applied in each case. Now that of course means the airlines that are snapping up these slots today, because pretty easy to get a slot anywhere you like, really. Yep. I saw I can't remember one of the carriers. There was it might have been Indigo. Did Indigo announce a flight into the UK, into Heathrow or something 5 a week? I can't remember, from India. There was certainly some talk about slots. Now, what happens to these slots, because they won't be grandfathered, of course. So if the original user of those slots wants them back next schedule season. So it's quite interesting. So the carriers that are there, that are able to capitalize on these opportunities now and respond where some of the laggards can't. I say that with the most possible respect.
As always.
But these laggards are unable to use the slots today. Does that then mean that the carriers that have been able to use them then sort of get kicked out the door next year when the original rules come back in northern winter, northern summer, but then northern winter it would be 21, 22 when the grandfathering would apply from this schedule season that we're in now. So that was interesting for me. I think there'll be a lot more debate on that going forward. Whilst the European Commission is expected to take a position on that in the next couple of months, it'll also be interesting to see what other slot coordinators and states around the world will do. Of course, we don't know what in the UK. Selfishly, we don't know what regime we'll be following after post the EASA. More broadly in terms of safety regulation, CA picking up the mantle again from the 1st of January. ACL. Does the UK go and do its own thing, or does it try to? I think what I heard yesterday was Michel Barnier was in Hendon in North London looking for a level playing field, photographed in a school playing ground. With a sort of kickabout ball, looking for a level playing field. Do we try to equalize in terms of some of those standards? I think that's all going to be a very interesting debate over the next few weeks and months ahead. Yeah, and hopefully common sense will prevail. Well, does that exist, Chris? We've seen that theory challenged over the last 7 months since this all kicked off. No, it should do, and hopefully, touch wood, when this starts to improve and it does start to rebound, people will remember what happened before, and they won't go back to their old ways of egos and standing in each other's way for the sake of it. We still need to keep things simple, clarity, move forward. Another good bit of news for a part of the world that we've spent quite a lot of time in and got a lot of care for. Saudi. So Boeing with the agreement or the contract now for the Royal Saudi Air Force. So something like nearly 10 billion, I think, up to 2025 for renewing their F-15 fleet. So that's a good bit of news for Saudi and also for Boeing. So that's a nice. That'll upset British Aerospace. Well, yeah. But I mean, for Saudi, it's good news. And then the other good bit of news, which was, I don't know whether, and I'm only saying this now tongue in cheek because of your Welsh heritage, but tongue in cheek, whether or not the vaccine would come before Scotland qualified for a major tournament, and they both come in the same week. So it's fantastic. But seriously, it's congratulations for Scotland. 22 years. I was still living in Scotland the last time that Scotland qualified for a major tournament. I would have been 17 years old at the time. So that was a long time coming, as they say. But look, I can guarantee you that where Scotland prevails is they are generally pretty good at snatching defeat from the hands of victory, Chris. So let's watch this space. On that note, those later today on Saturday, we're watching. There's two great rugby games on. There's Georgia Scotland at 12:45, and then there's England France, I think, is it at 3 o'clock? So so after James Wyatt has finished his run and listened to this very podcast session, I'm sure he'll be straight onto the rugby.
But you know, you do Scotland an injustice there, Steve, because I still think one of the best goals ever scored. No, seriously, one of the best goals ever scored at a World Cup was Gordon Strachan. Absolutely.
I think that was probably before my time, Chris.
Well, yeah. Well, the fact that I'm probably 5-6 years older than you probably wouldn't have remembered. But I promise you, have a look at it. It's fantastic. And also the one good thing, all these tournaments, the Scots, the Irish, the Welsh, they're always welcome because of their culture, the way they conduct themselves. And it's in the UK next year. So, you know, as many of the home countries as possible will make it such a.
You say they're all very welcome. You didn't mention English there, Chris. Are they not welcome?
Yeah. Of course they are. Of course they are. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
You're insinuating that the English were sort of not the friendliest bunch of supporters.
No, not at all. Not at all. They're always getting knocks, but God bless the Queen, the old Brits. They're everyone, all of them. Okay, it's the better the tournament if they're all included.
Indeed, yeah. Just like better together. Four nations is one. United Kingdom is better than one.
There you go, mate. There you go. That's
no something. Politics on this show, Chris.
You'll be able to use that in
you'll never be able to tell my politics. I play poker exceptionally well.
Yeah, we'll have to have a little game of that one day. But listen, Steve, though, it's great now. Good bit of news. Well done for Skylight Care. Brilliant initiative. And like I said, even if it's only one person, it will have been worthwhile.
Absolutely. I just must get in a little personal note, Chris. It's my wife, my darling wife's birthday today, the 14th of November. So I wish Ramani a very happy birthday, and also to all of my and our Hindu friends and family and colleagues around the world who are celebrating Diwali. Shub Diwali.
Very good, Ramani. Happy birthday from me as well, and to everybody else that knows us. Enjoy the celebrations, have a great time, and please God, now the world's going to become a better place because people care.
Indeed, Chris.
All the best, lovely boy. See you next week.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Shub Diwali.
Shub Diwali.